The Speech Showcase is an event that was started before I got here back in the spring of 2015. And since then, we have had 62 finalists who are drawn from all sections of our Communication 1020 Public Speaking General Education course. There are over 25 sections per semester of this class, and we have from those as selected by our panel of judges. That the people who competed this past Saturday were selected by their classmates and their instructors as the best speaker in their class. So this event relies not only on the phenomenal faculty who we have teaching Comp 1020, but also the dedicated students who are supporting one another and who send their classmates to this event every semester. I'd like to thank everyone who has been involved in the Speech Showcase since its inception, and I would like to recognize our selection committee for this semester's program. Judges, when I call your name, if you wouldn't mind rising, and if you would stay standing until all of you have stood up, so that you can be recognized by those who are here tonight. Our selection committee for spring 2022 included Dr. Nathan Rodriguez, an assistant professor in the Department of Communication, Cami Sabin, an instructor in the Department of Communication, Sydney Furton, the former executive director of TEDx Ogden, and Celicia Peterson, who is a fall 2021, this past semester, finalist in the Speech Showcase. May I ask that we recognize them? I'd also like to take a moment to recognize any faculty members who have taught Com 1020 this semester or past semesters. If you're here, would you please rise and be acknowledged? Again, it's not without the phenomenal faculty who teach this introductory course that we would have these speakers here. Our faculty work with these students throughout the semester as they work with all of their students. And although we are happy to welcome the 5 finalists this evening who will present for us, we recognize the fact that Com 1020 is a course that touches the lives of students from across the university, regardless of their major or the college in which they find their departmental home. So we thank all who are involved again for being part of the Speech Showcase. This evening, we're going to begin by recognizing the class representatives who are here in person. When I call your name, if you wouldn't mind walking around to the front middle of the bottom stage, so not up here, but up front. And Dr. Ann Bialois, our department chair, will be there to present you with your certificate for having competed as a class representative. So we are going to go in alphabetical order. If everybody who competed wants to stand up and move to the wall, that way we can get you here in the order in which you were speaking. All right. This semester, we had 11 competitors, and we have 9 of them here this evening. And I would like to recognize them each as they were selected by their classmates and their instructor to represent their class. Coleman Barrett. Hales. Daniela Inbrett. Kai Jackson. McKenna Meekum. Andrew Rich. Amberly Stewart. Lauren Wood. And Alyssa Zimmerman. Thank you to all of our competitors. And if I may ask, with everyone would be seated back at their seat except for Amberly, who will be presenting first. So Amberly, if you wouldn't mind coming over to have the microphone attached. Cammie, can I? We move to the main event this evening, which is the presentation by the 5 finalists who were selected by our committee of judges this past Saturday during the Selection Saturday event. They will present in the order in which they are listed on the program. And what I would ask for our 5 finalists, when the person who is presenting in front of you, the person who's going right before you, has gotten to about the 4-minute mark in their speech, if you wouldn't mind joining us over here so that we can transition the microphone to you. So that would then be Daniela, and then Coleman, and then Kobe, and then Kai. So just keep watching, and about halfway through the speech, make your way over here. Thank you. We will begin shortly with Amberly Stewart, who is going to be our first speaker this evening. Amberly's presentation is titled "The Power of Perseverance." She was born in Rexburg, Idaho, and still calls Idaho her home. She's a political science soon-to-be major. However, she is still a junior at the New Ames High School, which is located here on the Weber State University campus. She desires in the future to be a U.S. ambassador and to work in humanitarian service. Her instructor this past semester was Deanne Shepard. We welcome Amberly, and we thank her for being with us to present tonight.
The thought of graduating 2 years early sounded really great to me. So my counselor suggested that I look into New Ames High School, and here I am, a New Ames student, and this gives me the amazing opportunity to graduate with my associate's degree. I'll actually have my associate's before I finish out my high school credit. From the outside looking in, it may seem that my path through school has been all sunshine and rainbows, or that I haven't made, but this is far from the truth. My early accomplishments have not come without a lot of pain and perseverance. In fact, perseverance is exactly what I'd like to talk to you about today. No matter what problem we are facing, overcoming obstacles is possible through the power of perseverance. By first, recognizing your emotional needs. By second, asking for help. And by third, establishing a pattern of endurance and grit into your life. Through my elementary years, I went to 6 different schools. That is 6 schools in 7 years without being in a military household. Why so many moves? Well, for me, it was simple. If I didn't like my friends at a school, I would move out. If I found it too easy or too hard, I would switch. Or if I didn't like the teacher, I would beg to transfer somewhere else. I used moving schools as an escape. I would jump from school to school like a game of hopscotch, rarely finishing out in the same building. This became a pattern in my life because, unfortunately, I began to face my personal problems the same way. As I moved to junior high, I actually stayed in the same school, and I really loved it. Until a global pandemic came and shattered my world. I was in 9th grade when COVID started, and it posed a whole new problem. There was no other option. I couldn't switch out of or transfer away from the situation. I was forced to face my problem. Unfortunately, instead of developing problem-solving skills and perseverance, I quickly spiraled. I became depressed and soon found myself dealing with suicidal thoughts. I became someone that I hated, and it only served to accelerate the problem further. It took a lot of time and effort, but I was finally able to recognize that I had a problem that needed to be solved. When asked what kept them from, when teens hear adults, especially parents and counselors, say, I'm here for you, reach out if you need help, it's often ignored and even avoided. As someone who's been through this process, I can honestly say that reaching out for help is the hardest part of perseverance, but it is the most important. When asked what kept them from reaching out, teens' most common answers were things like, I didn't want to be a burden. I don't feel like I can trust anyone. Or even, I don't feel like I can put what I feel in, I don't think I can put what I feel into words. These are the things that are keeping thousands of people from reaching out for help. According to the CDC, between 2000 and 2020, the suicide rate for the US has increased by 35%. Please, reach out if you need help. Fortunately, I was able to connect with a school counselor as well as my mom, and I was able to develop some of those skills that I so desperately needed to persevere. Although it did not happen overnight, I was able to reevaluate some of my educational goals and look at my life with a new lens. As we reach out for help, answers to questions we didn't even know we had will come. Finally, establish a pattern of endurance and grit. According to a study done by Dr. Duckworth at the University of Pennsylvania, it was found that grit was the best and highest indicator of future success above looks, privilege, and even intelligence. Students that had patterns of determination and goal setting were found far more likely to graduate than less gritty students, even when testing significantly lower on standardized tests and with a lower IQ. For me, this is something that I still am working on today. I have to wake up every day and decide to push through the struggles of life. But as I continue, that decision becomes so much easier. So even though I found myself in a place where I initially lacked perseverance, I was able to overcome this by recognizing my emotional needs, by reaching out for help, and by establishing a pattern of endurance and grit in my life. And I know you can too. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Amber Lee, for your presentation. Our second speaker this evening is Daniela Inbrett. Daniela's presentation is titled The Immigrant Dream. Daniela was born in Colombia and still calls Colombia home. Her major is international economics, and she is a first-year student here at Weber State University. She attended high school in Colombia before she came to Weber State. In the future, Daniela's goals are to change lives by working for nonprofit organizations. Her instructor this semester is Paul Gadd. We welcome Daniela, who will be our second speaker.
Okay, perfect. Hi. So when you think about the word immigrant, what associations can you make in your mind with it? And really, just think about it for a second. When you think about an immigrant, the thoughts or questions like, okay, maybe it's a person that doesn't speak well a language, or maybe it's someone that's not so smart. Did the word illegal come to your mind? Well, today I want to tell you how I changed my perspective about immigration when I decided to become an immigrant myself. And I had something that I like to call it. It's the immigrant dream. I do not like to call it the American dream because honestly, every immigrant that decides to start from zero in a new country, whether that is the US or not, they just want to fulfill a dream. And that dream could be better job opportunities, better education, or just a safer place to live. And so what is it like to be an immigrant? And what does it mean to be an immigrant in the US anyway? First, let me share with you some information. According to the Center for Immigration Studies, the US had about 46.2 million immigrants as of November of 2021. And that makes the US the country with the highest number of immigrants in the world. But they only make about 14% of the US total population. In contrast, other countries like Saudi Arabia, Australia, and Canada, immigrants make over 20% of the total population. This right here just tells you that immigrants really take an important role on a nation's economy. In fact, the International Monetary Fund found that when a country increases an extra 1% population, it generates an extra 2% GDP growth per capita in the long term. And in developed countries, this happens mostly because of the mobilization of migrants, whose skills often complement the existing population. And the IMF suggested the UK, Japan, and the US to open up their borders so that they can avoid being overwhelmed by the aging population. There was another report by Citigroup and Oxford University that said that US immigrants were 2 to 3 more likely to start a business, create a patent and innovation, or even win an Academy Award or a Nobel Prize. They also reported that US GDP expansion since 2011 was directly attributed to migration. Ian Golding, a professor at Oxford University, said that the presence of immigrants in a country is usually related to higher wages, higher productivity, lower unemployment, and higher female workforce participation. On top of that, immigrants make so much for a country. And I could not talk about immigrants without talking about international students, as we as international students help to cover those shortages in enrollments where there isn't enough students applying for certain degrees or certain academic fields. And on top of that, we pay higher tuition fees that tend to be 3 times higher than average. And we also pay and do for the same things that American students do in here, but we use the money from our countries and we invest it in here. We also bring new ideas, new perspectives, innovative ideas as well. and new perceptions. We bring diversity to a community and to the student campus. We provide so much culturally and financially to the body of a school. And not to mention, if you think about it, or if you ask yourself, well, how come then immigrants tend to do all these things? Well, if you think for a second, immigrants tend to be more risk takers and entrepreneurs because they had already taken a big risk by coming to a new country where they may or may not be familiarized with the social habits or the cultural structure of it, or even the language in it. So they have to build a new life somewhere that could be completely unknown. And no wonder that we got companies like Levi Strauss, that it was founded by first-generation German immigrants. Or what about amazing singers like Gloria Estefan, who came to this country as a refugee from Cuba? Or great business leaders like Elon Musk, who is the founder of SpaceX and the CEO of Tesla, and who we know he has greatly contributed to the economy of this country. But also, being an immigrant means they have to face many challenges. I came to this country 4 years ago, and ever since I came, I've found myself shocked by several cultural differences and even language barriers. I think that being an immigrant has taught me to become more resilient, because we have to come to this new place where we didn't grow up and where we have to start from zero. We don't have any family nearby, and sometimes the feeling of being alone just gets overwhelming. And so I think that immigrants, they should have the opportunity to be heard, be treated with respect. I hope that at the end of this speech, you, like me, have changed your perception about immigration, and that next time you can think of words like smart, entrepreneur, risk taker, hardworking, when you think about the word immigrant. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Daniela, for your presentation. Our third speaker this evening is Coleman Barrett. Coleman's presentation is titled Breadth of Love. Coleman was born in Sandy, Utah, but today calls Syracuse, Utah, home. Coleman is a psychology major and a first-year student here at Weber State University. Before coming to Weber State, Coleman attended Syracuse High School. In the future, Coleman's professional goals are to become a psychologist and a motivational speaker. His instructor this semester was Deanne Shepard. We welcome Coleman, our third speaker this evening.
All right. First of all, thank you so much. And may I start with 4 lines from Edgar Allan Poe's last complete poem, named Annabel Lee. I was a child, and she was a child in this kingdom by the sea. But we loved with a love that was more than love, I and my Annabel Lee. My name's Coleman Barrett, and for the last long while, I've been falling in love. But more than that, I've been falling and stumbling over this idea that we call love. From parents giving their children over to the flashing screens, never to give them their undivided attention. The love that precedes vicious yet unprecedented divorce papers. Young love going from children, crossing the boundaries of what love is, turning it in abortion, abandonment, broken hearts. And the people that can't seem to find love at all, who have anxiety, depression, and sometimes ending in suicide. No, I wish to do more than just talk about the problems. associated with love, because we always go back to love. We all want it at some point, even the people that seem to have lost it in their lives. No, today I wish to give you 3 definitions of what love truly is, so that you can, 1, understand what love is, 2, assess your love and your understanding and your relationships with other people and your relationship with yourself, and then 3, to make actions based upon that understanding. So to start off, my first definition comes from a Greek word, and it's called eros. And eros is our intimate and our passionate desires, often physical and sexual, for love. But not always. This love can oftentimes look like trials with a child, trials with a friend, building a bond together. And that's what this love is all about. It's about a bond with another person. And that bond can lead to happy little children. That can lead to families, future little Colemans like me, hopefully. But this love is so easily messed with and tampered with and crossed. All of a sudden, it becomes more than just, I love you, and all of a sudden, it's, I love what's happening to me. All of a sudden, it turns into this egotistic view of love that's false. All of a sudden, it's self-love, a dependence on testosterone, dopamine, and oxytocin. But we still press on because of the little Colemans. Which leads me to my second definition of love, and that's philia. Unlike the first one, that's so personal, this one's spread abroad. Philia is defined as a fondness, affection, or friendship with. For these kinds of love, this is like when you go to a family reunion and it's filled with X's and O's. Some cultures a little less X's than O's. But it brings such a happiness to our society with social capital, social connections. Maybe this is why teens love to go and see their friends so much instead of stay at home with their family. I was one of those. It's because of this word that we call belonging. And philia is this belonging kind of love. From bonds to belonging to sexual to the social part of love. That leads me to my third definition, which comes from another Greek word, and that's agape. And agape means literally love feast. Like, it doesn't get much better than that. Or otherwise known as its Hebrew root, to breathe after. Do we really breathe after our love and our relationships with others? It has more definitions, actually. This word also is defined as the highest form of love, or our sacrificial love, our charity. And so I got thinking, if this is like the highest form of love, it would be the first thing that I probably do when I get home from like a big trip, or I'm having like anxious moments. And so that's like that altruistic silver door called the fridge. But it's perfect at the same time on this idea of sacrifice, because the fridge, it never complains to you. In fact, it gives you everything that's on its inside to you. It sacrifices everything, no complaint. Well, on this idea of sacrifice, in 2016, Wei-Feng Lin and some of his associates in Taiwan decided to do a study with sacrifice in marriage. So they had couples, 146 of them, they had them come together and do this study. And they found that if the partner was willing to sacrifice in marriage, they found more partner satisfaction. They felt more loved. They had more partner activity. And all in all, in their words, said, these people felt more cared for. But they found something really interesting. They found that if the other partner wasn't willing to reciprocate that same kind of love back to them, that led to depressive symptoms in the person that was willing to sacrifice, that was willing to give their all in a relationship. Sometimes, even though our fridges don't expect anything back, that can still leave their insides cold, empty, and gone after they've given it to you. All the more reason for us to go and fill up somebody else's cold, shallow icebox with our food or from our heavenly Costco. So from sexual to our social to our sacrificial love, bonds, belonging, and ultimately who we are becoming in our love. What more than what I did with this is what you guys are going to do with this after I talk about this. Because I can't fill up everybody else's fridge. I don't have that big of a wallet. But I believe, and not to say that we're all like bad at love or anything, but I think like math and English, it's time for us to graduate from that. It's time for us to go up a grade in our love. And I believe in the end, like Edgar Allan Poe says, quote, "But our love, it was stronger by far than the love of many who were older than we, of many who are far wiser than we, and neither the angels in heaven above nor the demons down below the sea can ever dissever my soul from the soul of the beautiful Annabelle Lee." End quote. May we all find, and you all find, the Amber Lees in your life. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Coleman. Our fourth speaker this evening is Kobe Hales. Kobe's presentation is titled Remembering Grant. Kobe was born in Ogden, Utah, and he still calls Ogden home. He is a history major here at Weber State University, where he is in his third year. Before coming to Weber State, Kobe attended Ben Lomond High School. In the future, his professional goals are that he wants to serve 25 years in the U.S. Army and teach military history. His instructor this semester was Brent Warnock. We welcome Kobe Hales as our fourth speaker this evening.
Grant as a general. Second, his political career. Who was Grant as a president? Third and final, I'm going to share some about his personal life. Who was Grant as an individual? So let's start out with his military career. Now, it's often said that Grant was a very cold individual, that he didn't care about the lives of his men. In fact, he received the nickname both in the North and the South, the Butcher. And as I'm sure you can imagine, there's some negative connotations with that, but these rumors could not be further from the truth. The fact is, Grant loved all of his men deeply, and he felt the loss of each and every one of them. What's less known about Grant is he was actually the 4th commanding general that Lincoln had assigned to oversee the war effort. Prior to Grant, the Confederates saw victory after victory after victory, in large part because Union generals weren't willing to make the sacrifices necessary to win the battles. Now, there was actually a time in the war when the Confederates had a legitimate chance of winning and having the United States surrender to them. Grant understood this, and he also understood that in order for the Union to win the war, sacrifices needed to be made. So he would throw his men against the Confederates because he knew that it was necessary to win the war. Now let's talk about his political life. Who was Grant as a president? Now this is often the most misconstrued part of Grant's life. Now chances are, if you've heard anything about Grant as a president, you've heard he was a corrupt individual, you've heard that he accomplished nothing consequential while he was president, and you've heard that he was a drunkard. Now all of those things could not be further from the truth. Now I'm going to share some of the accomplishments that Grant had while he was president, and you tell me if they sound inconsequential to you. Number one, Grant created our nation's very first national park, Yellowstone. So if any of you have ever been to Yellowstone, you can thank this man right here. Number two, during his time as president, Grant nearly eradicated the KKK in his era. You tell me if that sounds inconsequential. And number three, and perhaps most importantly, Grant oversaw the reunification and reconstruction of the South. You tell me if that sounds inconsequential. And I'd like to share some about Grant's personal life. Who was Grant as an individual? It's often said that Grant was very cold, very uncaring, again, an alcoholic, and none of these things could be further from the truth. The fact is, Grant was a loving husband and father. He loved them so much, in fact, that when he was posted to faraway assignments for long periods of time where he couldn't be with his wife and children, he would turn to alcohol as a coping mechanism, as most people would. And because of that, he did develop some bad drinking tendencies. Now, during his time as president, his wife suffered from a disease that made her constantly cross-eyed. Now, in this high society era, that was for some reason seen as shameful, and so President Grant's wife would always be embarrassed to have her photo taken or to have a portrait taken or to be at some public event, and Grant always told her, don't you dare ever be ashamed of who you are. You go out, you be in public, get your photo taken. Grant loved his wife. Now, to help illustrate just how much his family meant to him, I'd like to share a story from the close of Grant's life. Towards the end of his life, Grant suffered from a very severe form of throat cancer. On top of this, because of some bad financial investments, Grant found himself financially destitute. In fact, despite all of his amazing heroics and his accomplishments in defeating the Confederacy, becoming the president, towards the end of his life, Grant found himself with $80 to his name. Now, knowing he was dying and fearing for his family's well-being, he started to write memoirs about his time as a general and his time as the president. And despite facing this severe and horrible throat cancer that would make it seem like he was drinking molten iron whenever he took a sip of water, he pressed on. Despite the fatigue that comes with cancer, he would write as many as 10,000 words in a single day just to get these memoirs done. And after completing the last page of his memoir, Grant would die a couple days later. But in doing so, he would secure his family's financial security. His family meant everything. Now, as a history major and as a soldier, I look at a lot of individual lives that to most people are frankly not important. But every now and then, I come across an individual like Grant. An individual who ought to be recognized by everyone in the room right away. Men like him who gave everything for their family, for their country, for themselves, sacrificed all that they had. And my invitation for all of you is to take the time to look through our history books and find the men like Grant who made this country what it is, who sacrificed so much so that we can enjoy the freedoms, the liberties we also enjoy here. I promise you that in doing that, you will find a newfound appreciation for all the liberties, the blessings, and the beauties that come from living in a country like America. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Kobe, for your presentation. We come to our final speaker this evening, who is Kai Jackson. The title of Kai's presentation is DID, Deceivers in Denial. Kai's birthplace is Champaign, Illinois, and Kai calls Mahomet, Illinois, home. Kai's major is zoology, and as a second-year student here at Weber State University, before coming to us, Kai attended Mahomet Seymour High School. Kai's professional goals are to work in a natural history museum as a specimen preservationist. And Kai's instructor this semester, Dr. Nicole Deffenbaugh. We welcome Kai Jackson, our fifth and final speaker this evening.
So I'm scrolling through TikTok, and all of a sudden, I come across a strange video. Hi, I'm Bug, it says. I'm 17, and I'm a werewolf. Confused, I click on the account, only to find that it's filled with these strange get-to-know-me posts, except they all have different names, ages, genders, and appearances. As much as I wish this were just roleplay, it's not. This is the result of a mass hysteria that has taken TikTok by storm, leading thousands of teens to believe they all have an incredibly rare psychological disorder known as dissociative identity disorder, or DID. And one of those teens was my friend Rose, and it ruined 2 years of my life and very nearly our friendship. You might be thinking that no one in your life is naive enough to fall prey to this trap. But Rose is the smartest person I know, and she still fell prey to the hysteria. That is why today, in order to raise awareness about this issue, I will be discussing the wave of DID that has swept over TikTok, specifically where the problem started, the causes behind it, and what you can do to make sure those you care about stay safe. But before I can do any of that, let me define for you what DID is. Formerly known as multiple personality disorder, DID is a disorder formed from childhood trauma that keeps the parts of an individual's identity from forming into one cohesive being. This can lead to the appearance of having more than one person inhabiting a body. It is incredibly rare. According to the National Library of Medicine, only about 1% of the world is estimated to have it, and the disorder is not diagnosable before the age of 18. So how, then, did it become so publicized? It all dates back to a YouTuber by the name of Dissociated, who created content that revolved around having DID. However, they disappeared from the internet after a massive scandal, leaving behind a hole in the DID community that many stepped up to fill. With this influx of new media and content came a whole new wave of people with interest in the disorder, many of whom were teenagers. There are a few reasons in particular why teenagers fell into this trap. For one, Dissociated's downfall occurred in March of 2020, just as the pandemic was breaking in the United States. And so bored and lonely teens were turning to the internet just at the time when DID was making a rise to fame. It also does not help that a quick Google search, "Do I have DID?" returns 3.95 billion search results, many of which are self-guided tests with no basis in psychology. However, many naive teens take these as actual medical advice and believe that they have this disorder. This is what happened to my friend Rose. During the pandemic, she found herself in a relationship with someone who believed that they had DID, and then they convinced her she had it too. In fact, her brain was so convinced that it went so far as to manufacture debilitating symptoms of the disorder, causing her to drop out of school, losing friends, relationships, and very nearly take her own life in the process. I interviewed her about the time she spent in the DID community and how she came to be so wrapped up in it. She says, "When you spend years in the mental health system, never truly feeling listened to or understood, you cling to the first explanation that makes sense. And so finding a community like the DID community can feel like salvation. You're willing to bend your mind in horrifying ways, to twist to every stereotype, just because it feels like someone finally understands you. And then, once you're caught up in the community, it's nearly impossible to escape because it is an echo chamber full of teens repeatedly validating each other's experiences and beliefs anytime they doubt themselves, furthering this delusion that they have DID. Rose says that the community is a disturbingly deep and tangled web of lies and fallacies. Nothing you learn there is true. This disorder that you think you have becomes sensationalized. And every time you question the validity of what you're experiencing, you're hit with wave after wave of toxic positivity and validation. You're not allowed to question it. Because if you don't have DID, does anyone? And therein lies the main issue with this DID epidemic. So what can you do to help? I urge you to check in with friends and family members who may be particularly susceptible to following internet trends. I also ask that you educate yourself about the reality of this disorder using websites like the Cleveland Clinic and didresearch.org. And lastly, if you see a child on the internet who truly believes they have DID, say something. Be kind, but firm. It might just save their life like it saved my friends. Today, I attempted to spread awareness about the DID epidemic by discussing the problem, the causes behind it, and what you can do to help. But before I go, I'd like to leave the audience with a message for anyone who may have been affected by this issue or who may be struggling in general. I see you, and you can escape. And to Rose, who is here today, I'm proud of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Kai. And thank you to all 5 of our finalist presenters who spoke this evening. May I ask for one big round of applause for all 5? At this time, I would ask Dr. Ann Bialowas to join me on stage. For our 5 finalists, we're going to recognize each of you individually. When I call your name, if you would please come up and if you would meet Dr. Bialowas, she will present you with your certificate, and you can pause for a picture, and then we'll have the next finalist come up. Amberly Stewart. Daniela Inbrett. Coleman Barrett. Hales. Kai Jackson.
Thank you so much for coming this evening. I have just a few brief remarks before I turn the mic over to Brent Warnock. The one thing that I was really impressed with, I chatted with all the finalists and class representatives. Not one is a communication major, which made me both happy and sad at the same time. One, it shows me that this ability to speak is powerful and needed across all disciplines besides communication. And all of your future paths, you'll need to spread your ideas, your passions to everyone. And so that's why I know a lot of students, they hear gen ed classes and they get very discouraged, and they feel like it may be something required that they don't want to do because it's not part of their major. But you can really see the value of speech and this ability to speak to others. The other thing that I find so exciting about a speech showcase, we have things like TikTok, memes, all these things on social media, but still an evening that's really centered around you and your words is what is the most important. And so I was just very touched by all of your speeches in very different ways. I'm turning the time to Brent to speak more so about the speech showcase, and he was selected by our department to really be our speaker at this event. As Alex noted, this began in 2015, and when it is Speech Showcase Week, Brent has an extra spring to his step. He's strolling down the hallways, he talks about it all year long, but he really, truly is the champion of this event, and as faculty, we really wanted him to speak and share his passion with all of you. So thank you, Brent, so much for all of your time and dedication for making this happen, even through the pandemic, and back to being in face-to-face again. So thank you so much, Brent.
Thank you, Anne. Sure appreciate her and her support of this event. And just all of you for attending and coming out tonight. Thank you for taking time. I know there's a jazz game. I know that. And yet you're here. And this is more important. This is more important. And you can record the game. And you can get there later. Tonight I just wanted to do a few remarks. I know Ann said, oh, you're the speaker. No, I'm just going to make a few remarks, and then we're going to get out of here. But did you enjoy these presentations? My word. So good. We have done this now. We started, as Alex said at the start of the thing, in 2015, spring 2015. We've been doing this for 7 years now. We've done, I think it's 14 events, or 12 events, because we missed a year, COVID. Right? So we've done 12 events. We've had 62 speakers, finalist speakers, speak at this event. And you know what? Every one of them are recorded. You know that? Every one of them are recorded. You can go watch them anytime. And we've added now 5 more incredible speakers for you. We have like our own TEDx thing here going on. TEDx, Weber State, right? And so I wanted to show you, Alex, how you can go and view these, show them to your family, play them, at home, talk about them with your children, your roommates, okay? Because these things need to live on. These are really great presentations. So you go to our weber.edu, okay? You go to the A through Z directory and go to a communication. So Alex is just gonna do it. I know he's ahead of the game, okay? So he goes to the communication department. Then you go over to student resources. Oh, student organizations. Thank you. And you go down to speech showcase. And then if you'll just kind of scroll through those, Alex, for us, right? So the spring 22, we've already got your names up there. We just don't have the video yet. We will. Okay. But here's the fall, and you can see the topics for some of those presentations we had in the fall, and they were incredible. Hunger knows no bounds. Immersing yourself in opportunity, which was our own Celicia right here that did that. Okay, and then just keep scrolling. But you can just kind of see the topics. You can see the breadth of wisdom here. You have access, okay, to a lot of different speeches. I play these in my public speaking classes to give an example of what great speeches look like. Okay, so I hope that you'll take advantage of this TEDx Weber State that we have created here. Okay, and go watch these and re-watch them. And so all those that spoke today, you'll be up here shortly. Okay, and a good call out to those who record. If you will, would you give appreciation to our recording team back there? Thank you. And up here, because they do a tremendous job, and just really grateful for you to be here tonight. Okay, again, just a couple of quick remarks. On your program, on the back, if you'll pull out your program, on the back, there's a quote by Nathaniel Hawthorne. Who's Nathaniel Hawthorne? He wrote the Scarlet Letter. He's an American novelist that wrote the Scarlet Letter. Also, the House with Seven Gables. He wrote that. And a lot of short stories, a lot of really powerful short stories. Okay. I'm going to read this bottom quote on the back of your program, but I'm not going to read it all. I'm just going to skip to the most important part. Words, how potent for good and evil they become in the hands of those who know how to use them, or how to combine them. And I love that word potent. When I read, I stop on words like this and I ponder, what did Nathaniel mean? He's a writer, so he chose the word potent. What does potent mean? Potent. If something's potent, it's powerful, right? If it's a flower and you stop to smell it and it's really potent, it's strong, you can smell it. If you take a drug and it's potent, right? It kicks in fast. It's quick, right? Maybe too much sometimes, right? It's potent. And so I love that he used that word. Words, how potent for good or for ill for those who know how to combine them. And that's what communication is. Nathaniel Hawthorne wasn't the only one to talk about that, though. Can you pull up? Aristotle, and we all know the Greek philosopher 2,300 years ago, right, 300 BC, said this: using the tools of rhetoric, words, one can perform the greatest benefits and, unjustly, do the greatest harm. That's what words are. And isn't that strikingly how similar that is to what Nathaniel Hawthorne said in the 1800s? But that's not all. There's one more. How many of you are familiar with this book? The Four Agreements. Yay, some of my students are, because I talk about it in my classes. But the Four Agreements is written by a guy named Don Miguel Ruiz. And he's from the Toltec tradition. Anybody know the Toltec tradition? It's a religious tradition of Central America, of Mexico. And his father was a shaman in that religion, in the Toltec religion. And when you come of age, and I don't know what the age is, I think it's 12, but you could research that. When they come of age, the Toltecs would take their children and they would share with them an oral history that had been handed down from generation to generation to generation. And it was wisdom of the elders, is what they called it. And so when Don Miguel Ruiz was 12, his father took him to the side and said, Don, I want to share some stories with you. I want to share some wisdom with you. This is from our elders. And he shared what they called the Four Agreements. And after Don heard this, and he's only 12, and he goes, Dad, the world needs this wisdom. The world needs it. And his father says, no, son, no. This is to be handed down orally. Make sure your children pass it on. Make sure their children pass it on to your grandchildren. Make sure the wisdom stays alive, but keep it oral. It's an oral history. When his father died, guess what he did? Yeah, he wrote it for all of us. And it's so powerful. And you that have read this, you know there is wisdom in this book. I want to read just like 2 sentences from it. Okay, it's on page 26 if you ever pick up the book. The word is not just a sound or a written symbol. The word is a force. What's a force? See, my children hate this when I read books to them, because I'll stop and say, what does that mean? And they're going, just read, Dad, please, just read. Nope, we're gonna find it. What's a force? If something's forceful, it's powerful. It moves you. You've stood in windstorms that literally it's difficult to stand up in, right? Or maybe a stream or a river that's powerful. It can just, force moves you. Words are not just. This is ancient Toltec wisdom. Words are not just a sound or a written symbol. They are a force. Your word is the most powerful tool you possess as a human being. You in my class know, you've heard me say that over and over and over. It's the most powerful tool you possess. That's why I'm so passionate about communication. You want to change the world, this is how you do it, right here. You use words, you use communication, you use interaction, you use human connection. That's where it lies. But this is what's powerful. It is the tool of magic. Words are the tool of magic. What's magic? If something's magical, it's unexplained. How did David Copperfield make the Statue of Liberty disappear? Right? It's impossible. It doesn't make any sense. It's supernatural. That's what ancient Toltecs are telling us. That's what makes words so powerful. We don't understand their influence. We can't connect. We don't see the causal agent. But they're powerful. And you've felt them, haven't you, in your life? When somebody has said something beautiful to you, or when somebody has said something really ugly to you. You have felt the force. You have felt the influence. It's real. There's a real force. There's a real power in words. So here's the final line, though, of the sentence. But like a sword with two edges, your word can create the most beautiful dreams. We've seen some of that tonight. Or your words can destroy everyone and everything around you. That's words. That's what they are. That's what we're studying. That's what we're practicing in this department of communication. That's what we're talking about. That's the science of the between. That's what communication is, the between. It's the connection between me and somebody else. It's the connection between you and somebody else. That's what we study here. It's the most powerful science on the planet. I'm so grateful for you speakers. I'm so grateful for all of you that participate. I wish you could have heard all of our selection Saturday speakers. They were all incredible. But you can watch all of our previous 62 finalists, and I encourage you to do so. When the call to action is, because you that have my class, you got to have a call to action. The invitation is, when you leave this room, you're going to engage in words. It's just what we do. But be mindful, be conscious of the power of magic, because you're practicing it. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much to Brent and to Ann for their remarks this evening. As we close out the speech showcase for the spring 2022 semester, we have a tradition that goes back to the very first showcase. And in a few minutes, we will hear from both Brent and Ann, who will be leading us in the Weber Speaks anthem. Before we get to that, however, I want to take one more opportunity to thank everyone who is here this evening, to thank our speakers, to thank our competitors, to thank those who are supporting them, to thank their friends, family members, their significant others, their classmates, and their instructors who have been monumental in their efforts to get them here this evening. Everyone deserves a round of applause for the role that you have played in the lives of these speakers and in encouraging them and instructing them in the ways of public address. So I'd like everyone here to please give yourselves a big round of applause. And now we move to the last part of the speech showcase. On the back of your program, you will see that there in the middle are a series of lines of text. and we call this the Weber Speaks Anthem. In a moment, Ann and Brent will be up here, and they are going to lead you in this anthem. It's much easier for those in the audience because all you have to do is after each of the lines in gray, when you see the words in purple, Weber Speaks, all you have to do is collectively shout them as loud as you can. What we hope is that by the third callback, that everyone in this building, from this floor to the fourth floor, will know what Weber Speaks means. Or at the very least will have heard it and wonder what Weber Speaks means. So I would invite Ann and Brent back up.
All right. Thank you, and this is how we conclude, and we do it every Weber Speak Showcase. So again, it's a call response. I'm gonna read the first line, and you shout, Weber Speaks, okay? And you shout it out, and by the time we get to the third one, that should be the loudest of all. Got it? All right. When an answer to a problem is needed, Weber speaks.
Whenever conflict or justice demand resolution,
Weber speaks. And should fear threaten to silence the voice of freedom, Weber speaks. Good night. Thank you. Thank you.